AFC Wimbledon put a stop to Bradford City's unbeaten run. Carlisle were hit for 5 at home to Swindon. Doncaster picked up a big 3 points at home to a fellow promotion rival. And in today's video, we're going to go through all of the League 2 games that were played in Game Week 30 in a little bit more detail. We'll have a little bit of a deeper dive. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and let's get into it. We'll start out firstly then with the early kickoff between Gillingham and Notts County. Another big 3 points for Notts County. They've been on a really good run of form recently, and after their frustrating 1-1 draw at home to Bromley, there are a few fans who are again calling for Stuart Maynard's head, but I watched the majority of this game and Notts County should have won by a lot more than 2-1. That second finish as well from a Goldrick was absolutely brilliant. They made it a little bit tricky for themselves late on in the game when Gillingham did pull a goal back. I think Alex Bass should do better with that, but you look at the statistics, obviously Notts County created a loads more XG. Yes, Gillingham had a couple more shots, but in that first half, if Notts County going 3 or 4 goals up, then I don't think anyone's really complaining. A bit of a weak goal from a Gillingham point of view to concede for the Nick Shirula goal. Obviously nice for him to get his first goal for Notts County, and obviously that does now mean that they have created a little bit of a gap between themselves and 4th place. They are still 2 points behind Doncaster, but they now have a game in hand on them. As for Gillingham, things are looking pretty bleak. They are still 9 points above the drop zone, but they're not winning football matches. Since John Coleman's come in, they've not really had that reaction that they probably were looking for, and it's another defeat, another home defeat as well. Their form has been shocking. Just 2 points picked up out of their last possible 15. I don't think they'll go down. I think there'll definitely be 2 teams worse than them, but to say the money they've spent on that squad, they're absolutely awful. Cheltenham versus Chesterfield was the other early kickoff, and obviously the Robins picked up a 1-0 win. Thanks to that, I thought he was going to come up and show me his first name. Jude Boyd got the winner in the 92nd minute. A big 3 points for Cheltenham, who, to be fair, they've had a pretty solid season on the whole. If we have a look at the table, they're up to 12th at the moment, just 1 defeat in their last 5. They have been on a pretty decent run recently, whereas Chesterfield, again, that inconsistency in them games where they're pretty even, they're just not getting on the right side of them, and they are now 8 points off of the playoffs. That's a big ask when you've only won 1 of your last 5 matches. But in terms of the game, we'll have a look at the stats in a little bit more detail. Again, Chesterfield having loads of chances, creating loads, but just not doing enough with it. 17 shots, but only the 3 on target. And especially when people like Dylan Markande are no longer at the football club, they have struggled a little bit at times this season. And even when they've made some relatively decent signings, you know, Duffy came in on loan, then his loan got cancelled, and then they signed him on a permanent basis, all within the space of about a week. They brought in Michael Olakibe, who was at Peterborough last season, then Wigan this season, now coming in at 2 at League 2. Obviously not a great debut, 6.3 rating, yellow card and subbed off, but a big 3 points for Cheltenham. Former Bantam, well, technically current Bantam, Sam Stubbs as well, really shining at this moment in time, and obviously great for them to pick up another 3 points. I think when I saw Walsall 2 Salford 2, and the fact that Salford were 2-0 up after 75 minutes, when that second goal went in, I genuinely thought the wheels were going to come completely off for Walsall, and they're going to end up finishing outside the playoffs, because when you have back-to-back defeats and then you're 2-0 down at home. Yes, Salford are a decent side, but they lost to Fleetwood in midweek. However, Danny Johnson did manage to bag a brace to rescue a point for the Saddlers, and it's that type of fight and spirit that is definitely going to keep them to, you know, continue on and go on and win the league in the end. But great for them to be able to kind of put a bit of a stop to their recent bad run of form. I know that a draw at home isn't amazing, but when you're 2-0 down with 15 to go, picking up a point is not the end of the world. Obviously just 1 point in their last 9 available, but they're still 7 points clear of second with a game in hand. So I'm not too concerned about Walsall at this moment in time. Obviously a bit frustrating for Salford that they weren't able to close the gap on the playoffs. It is only a 3-point gap, but when you've only picked up 2 points out of your last possible 12 available, that's not amazing form at this moment in time for the Armies. But Cal Robinson's still doing a very good job there so far this season, and I think a point probably on the balance of play both teams would take at this stage. Obviously Walsall created loads, they had so many chances, but again just lacking that clinical edge, and that's obviously something that we've seen recently when there is no Nathan Law on that side. Obviously I don't think Jamil Matt was back to full fitness. No, they've gone with Gordon and Wheatley up front, so I do think they are lacking a goal scorer. Obviously Danny Johnson did get a couple, but I still do believe they need to get another striker in before the deadline day on Monday. Tranmere lost again, and Colchester picks up another brilliant away win. Lyle Taylor with a brace, Wera Edwards with another goal, but Tranmere, they're just getting worse and worse every single week. They are in real trouble for relegation. Now that Morecambe have brought in Andy Dallas, a proven goal scorer, I look at the league table, it's only a 3-point gap, and Tranmere, they're absolutely awful. 1 point picked up out of their last possible 15 available. They've only scored 21 goals so far this season. Even Morecambe and Carlisle have scored more goals than Tranmere so far this season, and I really do worry for them. Morecambe have picked up some decent form recently. When we played them, Bradford City, on Tuesday, I thought they looked a decent side. You know, they played some nice football, to be fair. Colchester, though, from their point of view, they're on a really good run of form. 10 points picked up out of their last possible 12 available. I think the playoffs will be too far away for them. You know, it is a 10-point gap at this moment in time, but you're always going to take them ones where you do win away from home. And look at the stats, it was definitely deserved. Colchester had loads more XG compared to Tranmere, and to only have 2 shots at home to a mid-table side, I think that's really concerning. But Tranmere have been a concerning side all season. Someone, though, predicted them to finish in the playoffs this season because of how good Nigel Adkins is as a manager. I don't want to talk about it. From a Bradford City point of view, a lot of the results didn't really go our way in this weekend, and when Port Vale went 1-0 up after 7 minutes, that was an early frustration for me. Then I saw that they got the red card, and I'm thinking maybe Accrington could nick something back out of this game. And you see, you know, the keeper's been booked for probably time wasting in the 27th minute. Then Accrington go and equalise. You're thinking, well, they're against 10 men. Could they go on and maybe nick a winner? No. Port Vale ended up turning it around and picking up another 3 points, which is obviously great news for them. It firmly cements themselves back in the playoff picture. 4-point gap between them and 8th. And their recent run of form hasn't even been awful. 11 points out of their last possible 15 available is pretty solid form. You look at the top 7, we are now starting to see a little bit of consistency in there, whereas you look a bit further down, a lot of teams are lacking the consistency. Swindon, though, they've come out of nowhere to really climb up the table. But in terms of this match alone, when you go down to 10 men after 13 minutes to pick up the 3 points, regardless of how you do it, is the most important thing. They did have to give up a lot of the possession. I don't think there's going to be many times where Accrington go to Vale Park and have 62% of the ball, but in terms of the rest of the game, it was fairly even in terms of the XG. Accrington had a lot more shots, but were a little bit wasteful with them, in all honesty, and I'm sure they'll be a little bit disappointed not to come away from that game with at least a point. And obviously, missing Sang. But Sang was the same player who got sent off against Bradford, wasn't it? Newport finally got back to winning ways with a 1-0 win at home to Barrow. I don't think there's really too much to talk about in this one, but Newport were on a really horrible run of form. They'd really sunk back into the relegation battle, but that 3 points there creates a little bit more of a gap. 7-point gap with a game in hand. I don't think there's too much to worry about with Newport. Barrow obviously started out well under their new manager, but it has then been back-to-back defeats since, and Kyle Cameron has been an absolutely shocking signing so far. At fault for 2 goals on Tuesday, scored an own goal in this one, and Bradford City loanee Tyler Smith, I don't even think he's starting football matches anymore. One thing that I was surprised by, this 5-4-1 that it looks like Barrow are employing, the 4 midfielders, none of them are natural wingers, are there? Spence and Gotts especially, they're central midfielders, so I'm not too sure if maybe Flashscore's got this wrong, but it seems to be a very defensive team to play when you go into Newport County. But great for them to obviously get back to winning ways. In terms of the game, it wasn't a pretty watch. I mean, you would say this is a bit more of a smash and grab really for Newport. Just 4 shots in the entire game, only 0.08 XG created at home. Barrow, they had some good chances, 15 shots, 5 on target, 0.7 XG created, especially in that second half. They were dominating the ball, but they just couldn't find a way through. And maybe if they started Tyler Smith, they might have got something out of that game. Although, didn't Barrow score in like the 95th minute and then it's just not been given? I don't really know, because I'm 99% sure I got a notification saying Barrow scored. Someone who was at the game or a Newport or Barrow fan, let me know your thoughts in the comments, what actually happened there. Morecambe got a big win, not just in terms of how valuable the 3 points were, but they scored 4 goals. It's been a big problem for Morecambe so far this season in terms of actually scoring goals. Andy Dallas on his debut obviously bagged a brace in what is deemed, is it a Fylde Coast derby? You look at the stats though, Morecambe absolutely battered Fleetwood, and while Fleetwood did also create some good chances themselves, it looked like quite an entertaining game. 6-goal thriller in there, and I look at some of the goals that were scored, they were a bit soft from both teams' point of view really, in the manner that they were conceded. A fair few from a set piece. Fleetwood have been very good at set pieces recently since obviously Pete Wild has come in, but brilliant for Morecambe to finally get back to winning ways once again after the 3 straight defeats in a row. They've lost a lot of games 1-0 this season. Now they've brought in Andy Dallas, I see them slowly starting to turn that around, because they have been a pretty poor team at home home so far this season. I think it's only their second home win, but that was a massive 3 points. It really does close the gap now on Tranmere, who, like we mentioned earlier, are in an absolutely horrible run of form recently. Only 3 points is the gap now. They've got the better goal difference as well. And if I was a Tranmere fan, even someone like, well, maybe obviously not Newport because they've just picked up that win, but even someone like a Harrogate, maybe an Accrington, I'll be looking over my shoulder, but especially Tranmere. I think the bottom 3 will be Carlisle, Morecambe and Tranmere. I'm just not too sure what order that will be in at the moment, but a massive win for Morecambe and a frustrating one really for Fleetwood, who obviously beat Walsall on Tuesday night, but then have lost to Carlisle and Morecambe either side of that. They're lacking the consistency, 11 points off the playoffs. Obviously, they've played 27 games, 9 wins, 9 draws, 9 defeats. That is very mid-table form, and I don't see them pushing for the playoffs this season under Pete Wild. One of the few results that did go in Bradford City's favour, was Harrogate 1 at Crewe 1. Obviously, Harrogate weren't unable to hold on for all 3 points, but I'm sure they'll probably take a point at home to Crewe. They have been on a pretty poor run of form recently, and it looked like quite an even game in terms of the amount of shots. Harrogate scored with their only shot on target and didn't even create half an expected goal at home, which I'm sure will concern them a little bit. Crewe clearly had obviously a lot more of the ball, a lot better of the chances, and probably did deserve at least a point out of that game. It does leave them 5th in the table, just 1 win in their last 5 and no win in their last 3, which I'm sure will concern Lee Bell a little bit, especially with them having played a game or 2 more than the majority of the rest of the top 8. I feel like it is now a top 8, maybe Grimsby and maybe potentially Chesterfield could sneak in there, but I think these sort of teams are really too far away, in all honesty. Harrogate, they needed that point. They had been on a pretty bad run of form recently. Since that win against Cheltenham, they've had a 0-0 against Colchester, a 1-0 against Doncaster, a 2-1 against MK Dons, and a 1-1 against Crewe. They're not easy fixtures, them, in all honesty. They're 7 points above the drop zone. They have played 2 games more, though, and it does concern me a little bit. They have only scored the 25 goals as well so far this season. Obviously, they brought in the likes of Tom Curzons and Ollie Sanderson to try and rescue that. Did either of them get a start in this game? Sanderson did. Obviously, Josh March being their goal scorer, but I think they've got a lot of injuries at this moment in time, though. I'm pretty sure they've got a lot of players injured, like Matty Folds, for example, but if you're having to start Levi Sutton consistently in your midfield, something's going wrong. He runs around a lot, but that's about it, and I'm sure Crewe were probably disappointed to only get a point out of that game. Doncaster got a very big 3 points at home to MK Dons, who again really do flatter to deceive, in honesty. Strikers Joe Ironside and Rob Street scoring the goals for Grant McCann's side, and obviously Scott Hogan did pull one back for MK Dons, but a real big 3 points for Doncaster. It just enlightens how good their run of form has been recently. They've gone to some difficult venues like Barrow away and picked up all 3 points, Gillingham away and picked up all 3 points. It's 4 straight wins now for them, and yes, they've played a game more, but there's a 4-point gap between them and 4th, but they have played 2 games more than 4th. Again, MK Dons just lacking that consistency, just 1 win in their last 5, 3 defeats in that time as well, and they are now 9 points off of the playoffs. I don't see them getting in at the moment. Scott Lindsay, I think he really is underachieving so far this season. We thought it was happening with Mike Williamson. It's now clearly happening with MK Dons as well. You look at the lineup and some of the players who are in this team, they've got an unbelievably talented squad, but they just can't win football matches consistently at this moment in time. They dominate the ball, but again, Doncaster created loads more chances, and I think the first goal that Doncaster scored came from MK Dons trying to force the ball out from the back, and it's just massively unneeded. A big 3 points though for Doncaster, and once again, MK flatter to deceive. Result of the weekend though absolutely goes to Swindon Town for their brilliant 5-1 win away at Carlisle. Now, I think a big talking point in the game was potentially the red card for Jordan Jones, although I don't think it would have made too much of a difference. 2 yellow cards, both for diving. Now, I haven't seen the incident for the second yellow card, but the first one for me looks like definitely a foul. Sobowale basically bear hugs him, and I thought it was a bit harsh. I haven't seen the second yellow card, so I can't really comment on that one, but a massive 3 points again for Swindon, who recently what's gone on there? Have been flying under Ian Holloway. 13 points picked up out of their last possible 15 available. 4 straight wins on the bounce. Only 10 points off the playoffs, but I think they're certainly clear now of any relegation trouble. 14 points above the drop zone. They've really leapfrogged a lot of the teams over the last couple of weeks, and it goes to show that this league isn't amazing. All you need to do is win a couple of matches in a row, and you really will fire yourself up the table. But in terms of Carlisle, they're doomed, aren't they? They're down for me. I mean, they've been down for a long time. They were down as soon as he appointed Mike Williamson. You're in a relegation battle, and you appoint a man who's openly said himself he doesn't know how to command a room. don't understand it. I don't know why they're still persisting with him. Yes, it's all nice playing this tippy-tappy football, but you've scored 22 goals all season. You got one of the worst goal differences in the entire division. You got the lowest points tally in the entire football league. You're 5 points from safety. You've only won 5 of 28 matches so far this season, and you've been battered 5-1 at home. I don't see how Mike Williamson survives this, to be honest with you. The recruitment over the last couple of seasons has been very baffling, giving out 3-4 year contracts to very average players. I think Elliot Embleton's been given a 3.5-year deal. He's done nothing so far. It's great for them that Kadeem Harris has signed a new contract, and obviously Joe Hugel looks to be a decent player, but he's just not really getting the service. Patchen and Whelan, I think, in the midfield are decent players. Gabe Breeze, though, for some of the goals, absolutely terrible. I know that Harry Lewis and Thomas Hurley before him weren't much better, but surely Gabe Breeze is due a break. The recruitment the last couple of seasons has been terrible. Carlisle in a real spot of bother, and the longer they leave it before they sack Mike Williamson, the harder it's going to be for them to get out of it. But I think even 5 points at the moment, that's a very, very big ask. Brilliant though for Swindon. They've been flying under Ian Holloway. Butterworth obviously scoring against his former side, and the fact they've scored 5 goals and Harry Smith didn't find himself on the score sheet says absolutely everything. They were excellent in this game and thoroughly deserved all 3 points. Grimsby picked up another 3 points on the road, another disappointing defeat for Bromley. They have lacked that consistency at times this season, but I don't think Bromley will be in any real trouble of relegation. It is just 1 point picked up out of their last possible 15 available, but they are 12 points above the drop zone, so I'm not too concerned about that at this moment in time. Danny Rose on the score sheet once again doing what he does best. The red card seemed to be a bit of an interesting one, to be honest with you. Lewis Cass came on in the 85th minute, was booked in the 95th minute, and then was booked again in the 96th minute. I have no idea what's gone on there. Grimsby fans, let me know down in the comment section down below, but a big 3 points for David Artell's side, and to say they hadn't won in their previous 4 matches, they're only 5 points off the playoffs. Yes, they've played a game more, and I don't think they'll quite have that consistency to get into the playoffs at this moment in time, because I think the teams above them have been a lot more consistent recently, apart from obviously Salford and maybe Walsall, but Grimsby are never going to catch Walsall, you know what I mean? They've got 17 points to make up having played a game more, so regardless of that, I do think they lack the consistency at times. They concede far too many goals as well. You look at the teams above them, the most goals conceded is 32. They've conceded 45 goals so far this season. Yes, they've also scored 40. They do concede far too many though, but still nice for them to get a very good 3 points, and hopefully they can keep that form up for them if they do want to get into the playoffs this season. And the final game that we've got to talk about then is Wimbledon 1 at Bradford 0. Just frustrating, really frustrating. More injuries picked up. It seemed like we'd finally put behind us all of our injury problems, and then you get your left wing back and your left centre half injured, and you're forced into making changes that you don't really want to make. The goal that we conceded was absolutely diabolical. I think it was Jake Reeves. He just allowed a free cross into the box, and James Tilley's just completely unmarked at the back post. Baldwin and Johnson seemed to be marking each other. Johnson was claiming that he was being fouled, but despite the fact we had 60% of the ball, Wimbledon obviously had a lot more shots. It felt like a lot of them were from distance. In all honesty, I don't think we had a shot on target in the entire second half. We only had 1 shot. That's simply not good enough. Graham Alexander chose to rest Bobby Poynton out of the squad entirely. I don't know why he decided to do that. Maybe he's got Tuesday in mind, but that's the EFL trophy. Focus on the league. We massively missed his creativity, and I just thought a lot of our better plays didn't really show up on the day. We made a couple of changes for this one, knowing we've got a lot of fixtures coming up now, and you can certainly see why Wimbledon have been successful so far this season. They got their goal and they just really sat in their shape, defended very well. For some reason, we were playing long balls up to Callum Kavanagh when he's got the rugby shorts man, not very good at football, but an absolute unit man at the back in Joe Lewis, who just mops absolutely everything up. And while neither side really had many clear-cut chances, we had a really positive start to the game. We conceded the goal, a sloppy, cheap goal again away from home, and we just could not get back into it. Michael Mellon came on for his debut and looked a real handful, in all honesty. I don't think Anthony Sarcevic deserved to play the full game. There's 10 minutes to go. Why not bring on someone like a Brandon Cayley, who, you know, we had on the bench and looked a decent player in the 10 minutes or so that we've seen of him. So I think at times Alexander needs to maybe rotate his favourites a little bit. Baldwin, though, had an absolute shocker. yeah, just a frustrating one. But Wimbledon, they're a good side, you know, credit to them. They're very effective. They're very good at home as well. And unfortunately, that does mean that there is now a 3-point gap once again between us and third. But we've been on a very good run of form. You're not going to win every game. And there's not really much panic going through the fan base right now because we understand we're not going to win every match. Defeats are going to come. If you're going to lose a match, you'd rather lose away from home narrowly against a team who are near you rather than at home 3-0 to bottom of the league, for example. So as long as we bounce back on Saturday, I think we've got Harrogate, so a bit of a derby in that one. And we've got a very good home form so far this season. If we actually have a look at the home table, that's what I want. The home table, we're second in the entire division. If we win our game in hand, which was against Accrington, we'll be the joint best home team in the division. You look at Wimbledon though, they're just below us in third. Our away form so far this season has been a big concern, just 14th in the table. We've only won 3 away games, that being MK Dons, Tranmere and Carlisle. That's not good enough. Our away form needs to improve if we want promotion this season. But like I said, big 3 points for AFC Wimbledon, and their very positive run of form does continue. At least 5 games unbeaten for them now. Bradford City just need to make sure that we do bounce back on Saturday. And there we have it then. There is the Game Week 30 League 2 review. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you enjoy today's video? What would you like to see me improve on? Make sure to like, subscribe, all that sort of good stuff. Really do appreciate you all watching to the end of today's video, and I'll see you very soon for another one. If you want me to make this a regular series, let me know that sort of stuff down below.